بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال الإمام السيوطي رحمه الله تعالى في كتابه النقاية: علم التفسير علم يبحث فيه عن أحوال الكتاب العزيز وينحصر في مقدمة 55 نوعا. المقدمة: القرآن المنزل على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم للإعجاز بسورة منه، والسورة الطائفة المترجمة توقيفا، وأقلها 3 آيات، والآية طائفة من كلمات القرآن متميزة بفصل، ثم منه فاضل وهو كلام الله في الله، ومفضول وهو كلامه تعالى في غيره، وتحرم قراءته بالعجمية وبالمعنى وتفسيره بالرأي لا تأويله.
نعم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So this text that we'll be studying is called رسالة في أصول التفسير, and it's actually an excerpt from a larger book that As-Suyuti rahimahullah wrote, known as An-Nuqayah. And An-Nuqayah consists of primers to 14 different sciences, all right, which includes Islamic sciences, Arabic sciences, and some disciplines that have nothing to do with Islam or Arabic, like medicine, At-Tib, and At-Tashrih, which is anatomy. All right, so you have Usool At-Tafseer, you have Usool Ad-Din, you have Usool Al-Fiqh, you have Usool Al-Hadith, you have Al-Nahu, you have Al-Sarf, all right, you have Al-Bayan, Al-Ma'ani, you have Al-Badi', all right, almost 14 different sciences. So the text that we'll be studying is actually an excerpt from An-Nuqayah, okay, and the interesting part of this book, An-Nuqayah, is that interesting thing about it is that he actually wrote it at the young age of 20. All right, and some of you may wonder how can somebody so young write primers to 14 different sciences? How was he able to do this? So As-Suyuti rahimahullah wasn't your average 20-year-old. All right, he actually authored his first book at the young age of 8, Tafsir of the Basmala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He commentated and explained what the Basmala means. All right, he wrote this at the young age of 80. Everybody over here, at the young age of 8, everybody over here is older than 8 years old. So by the time he wrote An-Nuqayah, okay, he was 20 years old, and he had 12 years of experience under his belt. Okay, and he wrote many books throughout these 12 years. So As-Suyuti rahimahullah, he started studying at a very young age, started studying under various scholars from many different places and many different countries, okay, and when he reached the age of 40, he decided to lock himself in a room, right, and he did so for the last 22 years of his life until he passed away at the age of 62 in the year 911 after the Hijrah, okay. And he busied himself with just writing and authoring books. That's all he did. He wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't even teach. All he would do was author books. And that is why he became one of the most prolific authors in Islamic history. He authored more than 600 books. Rahimahullahu As-Suyuti wa jami' ulama al-Muslimin. May Allah have mercy on him and all of the Muslims. One of the things about As-Suyuti rahimahullah is that he claimed ijtihad. He claimed that he reached the level of ijtihad, unrestricted ijtihad, right? And some of his contemporaries did not accept this matter. But ala kulli hal, he definitely had the tools, all right? He had the tools because he mastered so many different sciences, Arabic sciences and Islamic sciences, right? He also claimed that he was the reviver of the 9th century, okay? The Prophet ﷺ, he told us that every century there will be one person who would come, or a mujaddid that will come. According, there's a difference of opinion between the scholars. Is it only one person, or could it be more than one person? Al-Muhim, the Prophet ﷺ, he said there will always be, every 100 years, every century, there will be one person that will come to revive the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And in his book, At-Tahadduth bi Ni'matillah, and a little treatise that he wrote, which means basically, making the blessings of Allah apparent, right? It's actually an autobiography of his life, right? He actually mentions the revivers for every century, okay? And he said about himself that I am the reviver for the 9th century. Obviously, some people, they reviled him for this, and they didn't accept this matter. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best. He also says about himself, رُزِقْتُ التَّبَحُّرَ فِي سَبْعَةِ عُلُومٍ, that I was giving, basically I was a master. I was given the mastery of 7 sciences. At-Tafseer, Al-Hadith, Al-Fiqh, Tafseer, Hadith, Fiqh, Nahu, Al-Bayan, Al-Sarf, Al-Badi', Al-Ma'ani. These 7 sciences, he said, I was a master in. Alright, this is what he says about himself. And his biography, you guys can find it in many different works and online as well. May Allah have mercy on him. So let's delve into this book. And before we actually get into this book, let's talk about the 10 things that everybody must know before you start any science. There are 10 things that you should know before you start every science. As Ibn Sabban, rahimahullah ta'ala, a scholar from the 13th century, said, إِنَّ مَبَادِي كُلِّ فَنٍّ عَشَرَةٍ الْحَدُّ وَالْمَوْضُوعُ ثُمَّ الثَّمَرَةُ وفضله ونسبة والواضع والاسم الاستمداد حكم الشارع مسائل والبعض بالبعض اكتفى ومن درى الجميع حاز الشرفا. Alright, for those of you who already heard this, I know you guys, maybe you guys can review your notes, and whatever you missed, maybe you can catch. Alright, so the first thing is al-hadd, which means the definition. What is the definition of Usool At-Tafseer? Alright, the definition of Usool At-Tafseer is al-usus wal-qawa'id allati yu'rafu biha tafsiru kalami Allahi ta'ala. The principles and the foundations, okay, in which you understand the meanings of the Quran, alright, or the meanings of the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the definition of Usool At-Tafseer. And you have another term that is actually really similar to it, and that is ulum al-Quran, the sciences of the Quran. And a lot of times it's used interchangeably. You have Usool At-Tafseer and you have ulum al-Quran. And ulum al-Quran, the definition of ulum al-Quran is al-ulum al-muta'alliqatu bil-Quran, the sciences that have something to do with Quran. Okay? But we say that there's a difference between two. Usool At-Tafseer is actually a part of ulum al-Quran. Okay? Usool At-Tafseer is actually a part of what? Ulum al-Quran. Second one is al-mawdu'. Alright? And al-mawdu' basically meaning the concepts or the topics that is covered in Usool At-Tafseer. Obviously, the concepts that are covered in Usool At-Tafseer is the understanding of the Quran. Right? You understand the Quran properly. Alright? And that is its thamara as well. That is the fruits of it as well. You probably understand the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الحد والموضوع ثم الثمرة وفضله ونسبة والواضع. وفضله, its virtues. Okay, what are its virtues? Alright, what are the virtues of this science, Usool At-Tafseer? The virtues of this science is that obviously it is one of the greatest of all sciences. Alright? The Quran, or the speech of Allah, is the greatest book on earth. So understanding it is actually that in and of itself is something that is great. That's a virtue. Alright? The fact that it has to do and has a big part to do with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَنِسْبَةٌ, what is its relationship with other sciences? It is from ulum al-ala. Alright, sciences are 2 types. You have ulum al-ghaya and ulum al-ala. You have sciences in which you actually study in Islam. And there are 4 sciences. 4 main sciences that we study in Islam. Al-Tafseer, Al-Hadith, Al-Fiqh, and Al-I'tiqad. Alright, these are the 4 sciences that we study in Islam. But there are other sciences that we study that help us understand these sciences. They are known as ulum al-ala. Okay, from them is Usool At-Tafseer. From them is Mustalah al-Hadith. From them is al-Nahu. From them is al-Balagha. From them is al-Sarf. Alright, you have all these different sciences that help you understand these 4 sciences. And this ulum al-ala is actually very important for the student of knowledge. Okay, one of our mashayikh, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he used to say that one of the reasons why students of knowledge are not as strong as they were before is for the fact that they are weak in ulum al-ala. Okay, they don't focus on ulum al-ala, these sciences that help you understand the four main sciences. So it is very important and imperative for every student of knowledge to focus on these sciences. But obviously they shouldn't be, that shouldn't busy them from the other sciences, the four main ones. But you should study them so that it helps you understand these four sciences. Okay. وفضله ونسبة والواضع. Al-Wadi', who was the first person to find or to write about this science? Okay, and there's a big difference of opinion between the contemporaries. All right, and As-Suyuuti rahimahullah, in the explanation of this book An-Nuqaya, which he named it Itmam al-Diraya liqurra' al-Nuqaya, he says that the first person to ever write in this field was Jalaluddin al-Bulqini or al-Bulqayni rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Bulqini and al-Bulqayni. Okay, there's two ways to pronounce it. Who passed away in the year 824 in his book Mawaqi' al-Ulum. And this has been contested by many. All right, this is obviously not completely true, but As-Suyuti rahimahullah, that's the only book that he knew at the time. We already mentioned that when he was writing this book, he was 20 years old. And that's the only book that he knew in this field, so he assumed that this was the first book written. But scholars, they go all the way back to the time of Imam Ahmad, one of Imam Ahmad's contemporaries. He wrote a book called Fahm al-Quran. Right? Who wrote this book? Al-Harith al-Muhasibi, rahimahullah ta'ala, who passed away in the year 243. Some contemporaries, they say this is the oldest book ever written in this field. Okay? Some others, they have different opinions, but this seems to be the most correct. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, so that's the founder. وفضله ونسبة والواضع والاسم الاستمداد حكم الشارع. Al-Ism, what is the name of the science? We already mentioned it's Usool At-Tafseer, and sometimes it is known as Ulum al-Quran. All right, Al-Ism al-Istimdad. Where is it taken from? Where is the science taken from? Okay, what are its sources? Its sources are obviously the Quran, the Sunnah, all right, the Arabic language, and the statements of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hukm al-Shari'. What is the ruling of learning this science? The ruling of learning the science is that it's a communal obligation. It's fardu kifaya. All right, and it's not something that every single person must know, that every single Muslim must know. All right, and it's not recommended, it's not sunnah. Rather, it's fardu kifaya. You have to have some people from the ummah that actually learn about the science, master and become experts in the science, so that the rest of the ummah does not fall into sin. Masail. What are some of its issues that are discussed? So you guys can have a good start. For example, al-Makki wal-Madani. All right, what is al-Makki and what is al-Madani? What are its parameters, its definitions? Okay, al-Nasikh wal-Mansukh, the verses or the ayat that are abrogated, those that abrogate, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are 10 things that every person must know when they are studying any science. Okay, so let's delve right into the book, inshallah ta'ala. He says here, ilm al-tafsir. So he first defines at-tafsir. He says, علم يبحث فيه عن أحوال الكتاب العزيز وينحصر في مقدمة و55 نوعا. Okay. He gives a definition of at-tafsir. What is at-tafsir? He says, at-tafsir is a science that researches in the situations of al-kitab al-aziz, of the holy book. Obviously, this holy book is none other than the Quran. All right. وينحصر في مقدمة و55 نوعا. And I will mention, this is what he says, I will mention a little introduction to it and 55 types of Quran. Okay, this is his definition. طبعا there is a better definition for tafsir, and because some things do not go into this definition. يبحث فيه عن أحوال الكتاب العزيز, situations of the book. There's not really an accurate definition. A better definition is بيان معاني القرآن الكريم. At-tafsir means بيان معاني القرآن الكريم, clarifying the meanings of the Quran. Very simple. You have some scholars that give a long definition to at-tafsir. But this is a very short, concise, understandable, that gets to the point definition. Clarifying the meanings of the Quran. That is a tafseer in a nutshell. All right. He says here there are 55 different types. As-Suyuti rahimahullah, the funny thing about this is that he wrote 2 other books in Ulum al-Quran. And he does not say this. He wrote a book about 3 years after this, 2 to 3 years after this, known as At-Tahbir fi Ilm At-Tafseer. And he wrote this at the age of 23 years old. And he mentions 102 different types. Okay? He mentions 102 different types of Quran. Then 6 years after that, all right, he wrote his famous book, which is easily his best book written. In fact, it is one of the greatest books ever written in this field, known as Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran. Okay? And he mentions about 80 types. Okay? Why the difference? Why is this one 55, this one 102, and this one 80? The reason for this is because obviously As-Suyuti, as he got older, he got more knowledge and he found more sources, right? By the time he wrote At-Tahbir, he actually found Al-Imam Al-Zarkashi rahimahullah, a book that he wrote that is known as Al-Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran. He actually found this book. And this book, along with the Itqan that is coming later on, these are considered the two best books in Ulum al-Quran. They're kind of like a 1-2 punch, all right? So he found this book by the time he wrote At-Tahbir, and he was amazed by the book, and he used it as a reference, and that is why he had 102 different types, all right? And then later on, when he wrote Itqan, he went back, and he said that there are only 80 types. And the reason for this is because types or categories is something that is subjective. It can be different from one person to another. Right? You can consider this a type that is specific, this specific thing as a type. And you can, make it more general. All right? And we'll see this. We'll see this as we go on into the book. He says, Al-Muqaddima Al-Quran Al-Munazzal ala Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam lil-i'jazi bi suratin min. All right, he goes into the introduction and he says Al-Quran was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all know that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam via Jibreel alayhi salam, the great angel. All right, lil-i'jazi bi suratin min. And the Quran is a mu'jiza, is a miracle. According to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is a miracle with one surah, bi suratin min. The entire Quran is a miracle, but only one surah of it, all right, one surah of it makes it a miracle, right? Okay, why did we say surah and we did not say juz' and we did not say verse, ayah, but we said one surah? Because the reason for this is because when we looked at the Quran, there were many different challenges given to Quraysh, right? Quraysh was asked, okay, they were asked, can you bring anything like the Quran? They were first asked, bring 10 surahs like it. 10 surahs. And they couldn't do it. Right? Then they were asked, bring fa'tu bi suratin mithli. Find one surah, one chapter like it. Alright? And they couldn't bring it. But that was the least that we found, one surah. The challenge stopped at one surah. Why is this? The reason for this is, let's say the challenge came for one verse, all right? What is the smallest verse in the Quran? All right? Mudhamatan. That is the smallest verse in the Quran. It's one word. Another verse in the Quran is thumma nadar. Then he looked. That is something very simple. Anybody can come up with. That's not something, it's not a miracle in and of itself, right? That one verse. But if you take a surah, for example, right, that is a miracle. You can't come up with it, right? You can't come up with something like it. So the smallest surah in the Quran consists of 3 verses. That is Surah Al-Asr and Surah Al-Kawthar. They both have 3 verses. That is why the Quran is a miracle. The surah, just the surah of it is a miracle. And Quraysh was not able to bring anything like it, okay? Because they knew they couldn't do it. They knew this was something out of this world. They all knew it. Okay, the question comes, why did they believe in it? Most of them, they didn't believe in it because due to worldly gains. They didn't want to lose out on their worldly gains, okay? there were some people who actually tried bringing some to Quran, but even their own people, right, didn't accept it. So for example, you have Musaylim al-Kadhab, who claimed prophethood. He claimed that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given half the world and he was given the other half. Okay, so Musaylim al-Kadhab, he tried to make, his own Quran, if you want to call it, right? He said, for example, one of the things that he used to say was, "Ya ضفدع الضفدعين نصفك في الماء ونصفك في الطين." Talking about frogs, Oh, frog of the frogs, half of you is in water and half of you is made of sand or whatever. And talking about, frog is an amphibian, right? One of the things you say was الفيل ما الفيل وما أدراك ما الفيل ذيله طويل. Oh, the elephant, what is the elephant? Its tail is long. These old people didn't believe in this. They knew this was a joke, right? And there were some other people that had something similar. So the own Arabs didn't accept this. But the Quran, everybody agreed. This is too eloquent. This is something that no human being can come up with. All right, and that is why the Quran is a miracle with a chapter. He says, وَالسُّورَةُ الطَّائِفَةُ الْمُتَرْجَمَةُ تَوْقِيفًا. It says here in the book, تَوْفِيقًا, and the correct way to read it is تَوْقِيفًا. There's a mistake in the print. All right, what is a surah? What is a chapter? A surah is a collective of verses, right? That is tawqif. What does tawqif mean? Tawqif means something that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who said the verses start from here and they end from here. Okay, it's not something that the Sahaba came up with. All right, the titles of every surah, there's a difference of opinion. Did the Sahabas actually give names to these surah, or was it tawqif? Was it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Okay, but a surah, the chapters, all right, the fact that a surah starts here and ends here, that is tawqif. That is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَقَلُّهَا ثَلَاثَ آيَاتٍ. And the shortest of these surah are 3 verses. Okay, وَالْآيَةُ طَائِفَةٌ مِنْ كَلِمَاتِ الْقُرْآنِ مُتَمَيِّزَةٌ بِفَصْلٍ. And in ayah, what is an ayah? He defines an ayah and says, ayah, a verse, is a combination of words in which between each there are separations. Okay, so as you guys know, and you've seen in the Quran, you guys know what an ayah is. All right, ثم منه فاض وهو كلام الله في الله ومفضول وهو كلامه تعالى في غيره. Okay, so now As-Suyuuti rahimahullah, he says there are 2 types of verses. Okay, you have verses that are preferred, and then you have verses that are more preferred, right? Okay, fadil wa mafdul. All right, what does he said? How do you know which verses are better than the others? And before we get into this, can we actually say that some ayat are better than some other ayats? Can we actually say this? There is a dispute, but the correct view is that you can say this. All right, because the Prophet ﷺ, he clearly told us that the greatest ayah in the Quran is what? Ayat al-Kursi, right? If something is the greatest, that means something else is not as great. If it's the greatest, that denotes what? That denotes that the other verses are not as great as this, which means that some are preferred and others not preferred. But how do you know which ones are preferred, which ones are better, and which ones are not? He says, the ones that are more preferred are the ones that talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَهُوَ كَلَامُ اللَّهِ فِي اللَّهِ. All right? The ones that talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, you have Ayat al-Kursi. The entire ayah is talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm. It's talking about, the whole verse is talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you find any verse talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His attributes, whatnot, that those ayat are better than the ayat that talk about other matters. وَهُوَ كَلَامُهُ تَعَالَى فِي غَيْرِهِ. Other matters, such as what happens on the day of resurrection, such as the stories of the prophets, and so on and so forth. So this is a very good, parameter laid down by As-Suyuuti rahimahullah ta'ala, and he based it off Ayat al-Kursi. Ayat al-Kursi is the greatest ayah in the Quran, and what does Ayat al-Kursi discuss? It talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, وَتَحْرُمُ قِرَاءَتُهُ بِالْعَجَمِيَّةِ. And it is forbidden to read the Quran in any non-Arabic language. Okay, what does this mean? This means that when you're in salah, or when you are reading the Quran with the intention that you want to get reward for it, for just the words that you're reading, the words, the actual letters, then you cannot read it in non-Arabic, right? But you can translate it, you can read a translation, okay? You can read a translation of the Quran and whatnot, but you cannot read it as a means of worship, okay? As a means of worship, whether it's through prayer or reciting the Quran, you cannot do this, all right? This is forbidden, okay? So you can't go into salah and say, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious, all right? You can't do this, or you have to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You actually have to read it in Arabic. But obviously translations are allowed. Translations are allowed if it's not in the context of worship. Okay? وَبِالْمَعْنَى. Okay, what does this mean? وَبِالْمَعْنَى. This means, can I, let's say you have an ayah in the Quran. I say it in Arabic, but I say it in a different way, but it has the same meaning. Can I do this? No, you cannot do this. Okay? You can do it for the Prophet ﷺ's ahadith. You can do it for the ahadith, according to the majority of scholars. That's allowed, as long as you have a good command of the Arabic language. But you cannot do that for the Quran. All right, you can't take an ayah in the Quran, and come up with its use words that are similar to it. You can't do that, and read it. You can't do that. All right, you can do tafseer of it. You can explain the verses, but you can't you can't push it as if it's the Quran itself, because the Quran is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, وَتَفْسِيرُهُ بِالرَّأْيِ لَا تَأْوِيلِهِ. Okay, here he says that there are two types of tafsir. Okay, there are two types of tafsir. There is tafsir bil-ra'yi, and there is tafsir bil-ta'wil. What is tafsir bil-ra'yi and what is tafsir bil-ta'wil? Tafsir bil-ra'yi is when somebody comes, okay, and just comes without any references, without any sources, with no backing from the Arabic language or from the Quran or from the Sunnah, and makes a tafsir of ayah according to his own opinion. All right, this is not allowed. You can't just come up and say, oh, this is what this ayah means. You can't just do that without no sources, nothing. That is not allowed. All right. But the second type, at-ta'wil, is allowed. And what's the difference between al-ra'i and at-ta'wil? The difference is at-ta'wil, obviously the person who's making tafsir is firstly, he's qualified. He's qualified. Somebody's qualified. Not every person is qualified to give tafsir, okay? You can't have somebody who doesn't know the Arabic language, or maybe knows the Arabic language but has never studied, okay, and come and give tafsir. The person has to be qualified. Second, you have to have sources. You have to have sources, right? Either from the Quran or the Sunnah, because you have some ayats that explain other ayats. You have ahadith that explain some of the verses. Some of the verses may be ambiguous. And sometimes you have none of the other. You have none, but you have the Arabic language. Okay, you have the Arabic language. You go back. And also you also have the statements of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. You have to go back to these sources first. All right? So if you do that and you're qualified, this is legitimate tafsir. This tafsir is legitimate. Tafsir bil-ta'wil. All right? But tafsir bil-ra'i, that is not allowed. Ijma'an, consensus amongst the scholars. All right? This word at-ta'wil has two meanings in the Arabic language. All right? One meaning is that it means at-tafsir. It means clarifying something. All right? Giving the meaning of something. Right? It has another meaning, which means you distort the meaning of that very thing. All right? So we have to pay attention to when we hear the word at-ta'wil, or we read about it, we have to make the difference between what do they mean by at-ta'wil. Do they mean by at-ta'wil tafsir? Is that what it's meant by? Is that what is meant? Or does at-ta'wil mean distorting the meaning, altering the meaning? Okay? The Prophet ﷺ, he told us in a hadith, narrated by Bukhari, but this wording is in Musnad Imam Ahmad. The Prophet ﷺ, he made dua to Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. He said, Allahumma faqihhu fi ad-din wa 'allimhu at-ta'wil. Oh Allah, give him understanding of the religion and what? وَعَلِّمْهُ التَّأْوِيلَ. Give him understanding of at-ta'wil. What is at-ta'wil? The scholars, they say at-ta'wil is at-tafseer here. Okay? Al-Imam At-Tabari rahimahullah, Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Jarir At-Tabari, alright, and his famous illustrious work in At-Tafseer that is printed in 30 volumes. It's called Jami' al-Bayan fi Ta'wili Ayah al-Quran. Alright? Jami' al-Bayan fi Ta'wili Ayah al-Quran. Okay? Ta'wili Ayah al-Quran. Alright? Making tafsir of the verses of the Quran. Alright? But then you have another meaning of it, ta'wil, which means distorting or altering the meanings of something Arabic. And we'll see this inshallah mostly in Aqidah. We'll see this in Aqidah. Some people, they come up with a you have an ayah in the Quran, or you have a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and they distort the entire meaning, and they come with a whole different meaning that has nothing to do, that has no basis. Okay, this is also known as a ta'wil. So we have to differentiate between both meanings. طيب تفضل.
الأنواع منها ما يرجع إلى النزول وهو 12 نوعا المكي والمدني. الأصح أن ما نزل قبل الهجرة مكي وما نزل بعدها مدني.
نعم. Okay. Now he delves into the sciences, the 55 different sciences that he mentions. The first is, he says, منها ما يرجع إلى النزول وهو 12 نوعا. Alright? The first type is that, we have types and then we have categories. Okay? He classifies these 12 different types that are coming up right now, okay, as an-nuzul, when it was revealed. Okay? When was a surah or a particular verse, when was it revealed? Alright? And there are 12 different types that he mentions here. The first two types are al-Makki wal-Madani. Al-Makki wal-Madani. What is al-Makki and what is al-Madani? What is popular amongst many is that al-Makki is something that was revealed, or an ayah or a surah that was revealed in Mecca. And al-Madani is an ayah or a verse or a surah that was revealed in Medina. This is something that's popular, right? And you can tell by the name. But here, the author, he says that the correct view is that al-asah anna ma nazala qabla al-hijrati makki, that whatever was revealed before the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all right, before whatever came down, whether it was in Mecca or not, then this is known as Makki. وَمَا نَزَلَ بَعْدَهَا مَدَنِي, and whatever was revealed after the hijrah is known as Madani. And this is a better definition of Makki al-Madani than the aforementioned. All right? Why? Because sometimes you have verses that didn't come down in Mecca or Medina. What are you going to do with those verses? On top of that, you can tell the difference between the verses that came down in Mecca and the verses that came down in Medina. In Mecca, the Muslims were very weak, right? So it focused on a lot of, basics of the religion, aqidah, akhlaq, that's what it focused on. Most of the verses are talking about these matters, right? The stories of the prophets. And Medina, you see a lot of ahkam, a lot of rules and regulations, because now the Muslims actually had the power to actually pray publicly and do many other different acts of worship. Okay? So this is a better definition of Makki al-Madani. Anything that came down before the hijrah is known as Makki, and anything that came down after the hijrah is known as Madani. You have some verses that came down in Mecca, but they came down after the hijrah. They came down in Mecca, but they came down after the hijrah. These verses or these surah, they're classified as what? As what? Madani. Excellent. All right. So we understand now what al-Makki, al-Madani mean. And he gives examples of the surah, of the chapters that are Makki and the chapters that are Madani. And all of these chapters are coming up right now. Al-Baqarah wa thalathun taliha. Okay. Inshallah ta'ala, we will cover the rest, inshallah, after Eid next week. we will have off, I believe. Isn't that correct? Next week we'll have off for Eid. But the week after that, inshallah, we will delve into the other types. And obviously, we apologize for for what happened last week. Inshallah, from now on, if we can do a better job in Allah Azza wa Jal with the work, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll break for Asr. I believe they're waiting for us. We'll break for Asr, inshallah ta'ala, and then we will go into the other text, al-Bayquniya. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.